It's the Following On Cricket podcast. I'm Cameron Ponsonby. I'm joined today by Tim Wigmore of The Telegraph in beautiful Barbados, where we have a decider. On the show today, I've just spoken with Phil Salt. We're going to play that interview later. But we're going to do a bit of a review of how England have done so far, how much we can really read in to kind of these two ODIs, because we do kind of have an almost England Lions squad out. I know Manners and Harmy did a review of Liam Livingstone's incredible 124 not out, so we're not going to touch on that too much. Tim, 1-1, one very poor performance, I think it's fair to say. Then half a poor performance in the field. I think we were all ready to go, like blimey, like 2-0 down here. It's not looking brilliant. 328 looks like a lot of runs to overcome. Then lo and behold, an amazing innings from Liam Livingstone. Does that paper over cracks? Where do you feel this team is at the moment?
Well, clearly, these games have been a bit of a scrap between West Indies, a team who are not in the Champions Trophy, and the team who only just made it, who are missing a ton of players. So it's probably been a reasonable reflection of where the teams are at so far. There's two teams who are kind of sort of feeling the rhythms of 50 over cricket. In some ways, I think West Indies have actually got those more. I mean, that innings from Shai Hope, I'll just sort of look at the England team and be like, who could kind of play that innings? You come in.
Joe Root. He's not it.
Exactly. Yeah. Could James Vince play that?
So, it's funny you mentioned James Vince. It's almost like I teed you up. So something we've been wondering about, me and Tim, is England have this kind of absolute prioritisation of youth selection policy. Like we're seeing it across the Test team, we're seeing it now across the ODI team. You see Jacob Bethel getting put into the T20 setup as well over the summer. But does it almost potentially do a disservice to those players? So yes, the players get thrown into the Test setup, they kind of almost always have adults to look after them. Here in this white ball squad, there are very few adults, and it makes things like Shai Hope's innings, who played that kind of runnable innings for the West Indies, very difficult to see where it comes from. I think the stat was, from the first ODI, only Will Jacks and Phil Salt as openers had ever batted for England in that position in one-day cricket more than once in their life. They were the only two who had done that. Everyone was learning on the jobs together.
And in Jordan Cox and Dan Mousley, they were playing in a role that they'd never batted in 50 over cricket.
Hey, Dan Mousley, when was his last List A game before the ODI in Antigua?
2021 in Sri Lanka.
Exactly. He played. I've done a disservice there.
Is this a quiz?
It is a quiz. That's actually what the show is. It wasn't an England Lions tour of Sri Lanka. It wasn't like Warwickshire going over for a pre-season friendly. He was playing in the local domestic Sri Lankan league. And I'm desperate for him to get him on the show later in this series, just to ask him about it. That's all I care about. How did he end up there as a 20-year-old lad from Warwickshire playing in that league? Remarkable. But it basically meant that everyone was taking their stabilisers off at the same time. And is that healthy? Could England be creating a better learning environment if you put in your David Malans, your James Vinces, Johnny Bairstow, he's an England contracted player at the moment, or are we potentially over-analysing a very unique set of circumstances?
So in general, bilateral ODIs, they are there to learn, and I think learning matters probably a bit more than winning, and it's good to give those caps around. However, if you're coming to the Test side now, you're coming into a side that, until the series of Pakistan, has mostly been winning and pretty successful. That's quite a good environment to come in. This England team in ODIs have lost 12 and 18 before this series.
Yep.
So yeah, that was until the last game. So 12 and 19 now. So it's a team that's losing, which is more than they would like, which makes it harder. And also, there comes a point when if you're blooding a lot of players in positions that they're not going to fulfill in the first choice team, at what point is it better to blood one fewer in a game, but actually give everyone
a better opportunity of learning for the future?
Chance that the role that they would then fulfill in a full strength team. So basically, this squad as a whole, I don't really object to it too much. I just think they need one more, a grown up, one more of those kind of a guy to do the Shai Hope innings, and I think for me, James Vince would be the best option there. But if you don't want to pick him...
Is that going backwards to call these guys back?
Is it going backwards? Because he'll be... Next World Cup, he'll be 36. It's not beyond the realms he could play. And I just think there is a value in winning cricket. There's a lot of people who've played a lot of games. But
it's a value in winning matches. Good point, Tim.
There comes a point, and that is the point. And I actually think having him having someone like him there would mean everyone else is then playing the role that they would hope to do in the Champions Trophy in a full strength team. So you have him as your Joe Root replacement, if you like, And actually, by the way, I don't think, with England's test schedule and so on, I don't think it's beyond the realms that England might actually say to Joe Root, maybe play the Champions Trophy, and then after that, maybe have a break. Or have a break and see where you're at in 18 months. And actually, I just think ODI's in such a weird place where they're kind of an afterthought. I think it'd be quite nice to have someone for whom bilateral ODIs are the biggest thing that they...
Sure.
Yeah.
It's strange though, because I remember talking to James Vince about this a couple of years ago and asking him what the difference was between being called up for England. The Ashes was when he was first picked, but I know it's the Ashes, so it kind of skews this. What's the difference of getting the phone call to play for England when you're first choice versus when you're in the B team, filling in? And he's like, of course there's a difference. Like, that pride isn't quite... I'm kind of paraphrasing him. He's like, you could sense he was like, the pride isn't quite the same. And I think for the likes of Sam Billings, James Vince, Liam Dawson, who are these perennial kind of like late night call-ups, where it's like, right,
but if you wanted to, if you didn't want to go for those guys, Sam Hain would be a similar option.
Sam Hain, I think, is a very good option.
For example, who is kind of half a generation younger than Vince. So even if you don't go for Vince, there's other options. And I just think that, because obviously what we all talked about and would have become a big thing if England lost the second game, using 9 bowlers was quite odd. And it
was
sort of
strange.
suggests that we picked all these all-rounders because no one's in their kind of perfect position.
I've very much enjoyed Liam Livingston's answer to whether that was the plan on Saturday. He just went, no. It was not the plan. He was there. It was the way I kind of thought about it. Bless him, he's patronising, but like it kind of ties into what I was going to lead on to. I might be imagining things here and kind of being wise after the fact and kind of like looking for my own confirmation bias, but I felt on this tour, I felt a real, for all the chatter of like bilateral ODI cricket, it doesn't matter. It's about learning rather than winning. I felt like talking to England, talking to Livingston in particular, there's a genuine determination here, which I'm not saying is absent in previous tours I've been on, but it is in contrast to the idea of like, I think back home there's a chance that this tour is kind of slipping under the radar, whereas actually for all the players out here, they know that on an individual level this is such a big like individual opportunity and audition for the future. I think Livingston's like dialed in this trip. He's been really focused when he's been talking to us, and we've just spoke to Phil Salt, and I got the same impression from him as well. You'll hear this in his interview. He's like, I really want to play more 50 over cricket. I want to get better at this. Like, I'm trying to improve. I was frustrated with my first innings. I was hitting fielders, and I was frustrated again with my second innings because I've left runs out there, and I'm desperate to do well here and in Barbados in this series kind of finale. Is that an impression you've got at all, or am I making things up?
No, I think it probably does feel more serious than some previous bilateral series. And I think one reason is that because England have done a lot of losing now recently, the players are fed up with losing. And also, actually, if you think about getting to a global tournament, England 2019 was a perfect example. Their aura, their confidence was built on being very, very good in bilateral cricket. And it's probably true that no team will ever get that chance again with ODIs being so prominent. But even so, given how few 50-over games they actually play, actually winning again, we go back to the same point. Winning does have a value, and actually, I think England winning here is definitely good for the Champions Trophy.
It goes into your point actually that you made earlier about like when you were talking about in the context of Vince or Dawson, where like having someone for whom bilateral cricket is the most important thing. Lo and behold, there are no red ball players here, apart from Jordan Cox, who's going to be the New Zealand, but he's at the beginning of his career. Rayan Ahmed's going to join soon as well. So for everyone out here, this is kind of their test cricket. This is their main stage. Remember, Reece Topley said that last year. It's like, this is when the T20 went down to the fifth series. T20 series went down to the fifth match. He was like, this is my kind of World Cup final. This is my test cricket. I really care about this. I've enjoyed that because you've made a point, and it's backed up what I was thinking. Right, we're now going to go to the Phil Salt interview. It's about 10 minutes long, and I'll be playing for you right now. The Phil Salt bat signal has gone up. Phil, I've heard a rumour that you spent some time growing up here in your childhood. Can you confirm or deny?
I didn't. No one's ever asked me this before, but yeah, I did live here. I think from about 10 to 16 till I went back to the UK. So obviously got very fond memories of the place, and it'd be nice to get a series win on return.
We do have a new Barbados-based question to ask you this time round. Jacob Bethel, you and him both went to the same school, not at the same time. Just wondering, from your time having grown up here, and Bethel kind of followed in your footsteps almost, like when was the first time you heard about him, and was there any chat about who was better at school, like him or you?
The first time I heard about Beth was a few years ago. I came back for a couple of weeks to train before Big Bash, and Franklin Stevenson, I was training up by him, and he told me, "Oh, you got to see this young lad. He's going over to the UK soon." He said he's about this high, um, and yeah, that was the first I'd ever heard of him, and I kept an eye out for him, a couple of years after that, but didn't really hear too much from him. And then obviously signed professional, and now I can't stop hearing about him.
How exciting is it to be able to see someone kind of go all the way up when you first hear about them as a teenager? Because you must hear loads of people tell you that, oh, so-and-so, this 14-year-old is a good player. But actually, see Bethel, who was a Bayesian lad as well, is a Bayesian lad, come over to the UK and make it. And it seems like very, very good players think he's very, very good, and it's very exciting for England.
Yeah, it is nice. I've been lucky in my time that I've had that with a lot of people. I had that with Joffre when Joff came over and we were living together. So it's quite a similar feeling. I really enjoy seeing the both of them do well. Obviously, what Beth's done already in an England shirt. He's only, what's he, 20, 22?
21, 22,
21.
I don't even know.
It's remarkable.
He only had his birthday last week.
See, that's remarkable, and I think with Beth it's more, obviously his cricket speaks for itself. You watch him, you know he's a good player, but I think it's more the head that's on his shoulders, the way he thinks about the game, the way he studies the game. I think that's the most impressive bit. I don't think that's the thing that a lot of professionals have going at 21. I'm really excited for him. I'm really pleased that he's making a mark already.
And we're not just speaking to you because we're in Barbados. You played a very fine innings in the second ODI and Antigua, setting up what was a very impressive run chase. Just from a personal level, how satisfying was that knock?
It was satisfying at the end of the game. When you get to those positions, I'm my own, harshest critic. I know that. I feel like I should have gone on and made a really big score, and shouldered a bit more of the work at that point in time. Obviously, the way Sammy and Livy and Beth came in and played, was brilliant. But I'm happy with where my game's at now in 50 over cricket. It's been a tough one, having a whole year basically of playing just T20 cricket. I think it's really nice to be back in the rhythm of 50 over cricket and being exposed to that. I'm happy with where my game's at the moment, and hopefully I take that into the third game here and finish with the series win.
When Livingston, after the first ODI, came out and he said, we need to bat smarter, what does that mean for a player like you, who's like, your role is to be like very aggressive at the top? Like how do you kind of process that information and that messaging of like, right, I need to be smarter, but also I need to be forcing the issue as much as possible for my team?
I think when anybody's at their best, they're aggressive and smart. I think people can hear that and think that that one goes against the other, but I hear that and think, yeah, they go hand in hand. They have to if you're going to have any success in white ball cricket. I think it's just about reading the game. I think it's about being exposed to those situations where you have the opportunity to adjust. I think as a professional that is the smartness that Livy's on about. I don't think it's necessarily execution or your skill or anything to do with hitting the ball or bowling the ball. I think that it's where's your head at this point in time. For myself, it would be prolonging my innings, extending partnerships. Those are two of the most important things I think in 50 over cricket, so I think that should go hand in hand.
How do you evaluate your own kind of 50 over career so far? Because I remember reading a statistic, I'm sorry to bring it up, about like Salt's not getting out of the power play in 50 over cricket, and it looks like you go, right, this is over a fairly large sample size, but actually, like you say, you haven't played 50 over cricket in a year, so it's like, well, actually, you're making an assumption of a run of something over a long period of time, which actually got a series of anomalies. Like, what has been you seem very settled in the T20 sides. Do you feel the same in the ODI side? Kind of how have you assessed your performances?
I know I could have got more runs. I think for myself, it's how do I drop the strike rate and pump the average. It's very easy. I don't think there's many players in this team that you could go through and go, oh, they're doing a great job right now. I think that's the reality of it, because we've not played a lot of 50 over cricket. I'd love something like a domestic 50 over competition. I would love the opportunity to play in that, so you can get the rhythm, and it's not always stop start. That's not what we've got. So as a player, you have to adapt. The honest answer is I don't really know. I'm taking it one game at a time. If I can be better, today than I was yesterday, perfect. Tomorrow I want to get better again. I don't think there's many people that can just walk in and do it after not playing for a while, I think, is the bottom line.
Is that something you mentioned there, the want or desire for a 50 over competition that you can compete in? Obviously you're in the 100, so those clash. Is that a sentiment that's shared within the players? Is that something you've felt for a long time, that you want this opportunity to play and kind of perfect this format?
I can only speak for myself. I've not had that chat with anybody else really. That's just my own thoughts. I think it'd be exactly the same the other way around. I think if I only played 50 over cricket for a year, I think there'd be criticisms when I go back to T20 cricket. I think that's very, very natural. I think that's just my own thoughts on it. I know that I've not had the most successful time in 50 over cricket so far, and I've not really been doing myself justice. But the more opportunities I get to play it, the better I will be at it. Is the bottom line.
It's made me wonder there. I remember reading an interview with you earlier on the season about your desire to play more red ball cricket, and there was a moment where there was talk about a new wicketkeeper potentially going into the Test setup, but then you've got the IPL, so you missed that block of the county championship for Lancashire, and then you play in the 100, so you missed the domestic 50 over competition. How difficult is it for you to kind of improve your game the way you want to, when you don't have the opportunities to play in the format stats you want to progress in?
It's difficult because it's not like I'm short of cricket.
Yeah.
I've got cricket to play 12 months of the year. If that's what I want to do, I can do that. There's been conversations about the schedule for ages, and how that's set up. And I'm not really going to go into that, but I just want the opportunity to be as successful as I can be, really.
But on that, Brendan McCullum's taking over the white ball side in January. For someone who doesn't have masses of opportunities to play red ball cricket for Lancashire, to whack a few sixes, score a few hundreds for England in front of the Test coach, if playing Test cricket is something you'd like to do, surely that's a very exciting appointment for you.
Yeah, I think Baz is aware there's a lot of players. I don't think he's going to watch me bat and think I'm the only man in England.
You never know, Phil. You never know.
But I don't really look too far in the future. That's not really my style. I know I've got training day tomorrow and then the game's the day after, so that's where I'm at the minute. Maybe I will play Test cricket, maybe I won't, but the focus right now is 50 over cricket and myself being successful in that, and the side being successful in that, because we've got a lot of 50 over cricket coming up.
Then last question on 50 over cricket: if it's not going to be a case of just more ODIs that can be put into the schedule for you guys to have the chance to play, what could that look like? Could that look like more England Lions fixtures across the summer? Could that look like a second list A competition across the summer which doesn't clash with the 100? Does that look like anything in your mind, basically?
I've got that. I'm not paid enough for that. I'm not paid enough to set the schedule up as well.
But Phil, we'll discuss it. We'll work it out off air. It's all perfect. Phil, thank you very much.
Thanks, mate.
Phil Salt there, joining us on the podcast. Always a pleasure talking to Phil. He's been playing golf today. Shot Cora.
Sure.
They're up and out at 6 a.m, which I really enjoyed. Something I thought that Phil said, which was very interesting, and I misheard it, to be honest, because he said, I would love the opportunity to play some more domestic 50 over cricket. He obviously doesn't have that chance because it clashes with the 100. I initially thought he'd said I'd like then to be a new domestic 50 over competition, which is different. And I said that to the media manager, Matt, and I went, did he just say that? And he went, he definitely did not say that. He did not say that. And I was quite relieved actually, because I was like, Phil, no one needs that news headline. But how does a player like Salt go about? How does an England player go about getting more 50 over cricket? Because
They could go to Sri Lanka.
They go to Sri Lanka. They follow the Dan Mousey route, because like this era where we used to say 50 over cricket is an extended T20, that's over. Players, and that's not us saying that. That's players. It's been a very distinct change just since over the last 18 months, 2 years.
I mean, the World Cup crystallised that for
Absolutely.
sure. Where I think in that World Cup final, 20 players have played in Test cricket before.
We'll say that again. What?
In the World Cup final,
Yeah.
of the two teams, India and Australia, all but 2 of the players have played Test cricket before.
Okay, so the idea was that it wasn't a specialised T20 team. It wasn't the case that you had 20 white ball specialists in there.
No,
You had
it was
red
close.
ball
It
players.
was closer for many teams. It was closer to their Test team than their T20 team.
And so when like Salt's saying I'd love the opportunity to play more domestic 50 over cricket, or I'd just love the chance to play more 50 over cricket, yes, we can like have a laugh and a giggle and go like, oh, take yourself off to Sri Lanka, play in the Lanka Premier League, Metro Bank. But what does that actually look like? How do we confront this problem? Because Phil Salt, how does he? If he wants to play Test cricket, he's at the IPL, so he can't play in the red ball block. If he wants to play 50 over cricket, he's playing the 100, so he doesn't get to do that either. How do you get to improve, and where can we make space for players to be able to improve?
Well, in the domestic calendar, I think what's pretty clear is what should happen is the season should start with some 50 over cricket in April, and even having.
Are you doing that overseas or in England?
I think you can do it in England.
Cool, that's fine.
And I think actually you'll reduce. You have a lot of injuries early season because bowlers are going from nothing to bowling, 25 overs in a day.
Yeah,
I think it's a gentle introduction all round, and even just getting, say, 4 games in and finishing the tournament during the 100. That still means that the next.
I hate that split competition.
Everything's
bad.
not ideal, but I think it's not fair on the guys who are coming up that they just haven't played any domestic 50 over cricket. So England, if the format is to stay, which the World Cup's confirmed to 2031 at least, then England actually need to find a way. And actually, I think the World Cup last year, England being poor in that, I don't think that was to do with the schedule, because the guys who are playing international cricket all the time, they don't play domestic cricket, as we know. So that wasn't actually a problem. Now is actually we're seeing with the new guys who are coming up, as we're seeing with Cox, had only played 4 50 over games at all in his whole professional career. So that's when the time lag is really starting to have an effect, and England need to give the new generation more of a chance. I think that would be a small step towards doing that. I mean, otherwise it is just difficult, because England in that 2015 to 19 era, they just played a lot of ODIs. They played probably 18, 20 ODIs a year, and now they play maybe a dozen.
It is strange, because I was briefly kind of flirted with the opinion of like, I think you might have to just get rid of a format. I was like, I remember talking to someone called Simon Chadwick, who's like a sports, I don't even know how to describe what he does. He's just a very intelligent man who analyses like sports businessmen. He is a guru. He's a sports business guru, and he said that to me, and like that I get formats fatigue with cricket. He said, I like cricket, but I can't be bothered, because I turn on my TV and it's the same teams in slightly different colours playing a slightly different format to the one I watched last week and decided to invest in. He's like, no other sport in the world successfully runs multiple formats. Like, you can maybe say rugby with sevens, but like that's kind of the point. Rugby sevens is a beer fest, basically.
It's a gateway into the...
Exactly. And so for Varad, I went, that's going to be my trendy opinion. I'm going to say get rid of ODI cricket, like boring 50 over, let's just have long formats and short formats. And I still think there's potentially an argument for that. But seeing innings like Livingston plays over the weekend, hearing Phil Salt talk about the challenges of playing against 2 new balls and just the variety of skills required to perfect ODI cricket, when we're talking about who can play that innings that Shea Hope played, we're talking about, we say Joe Root, who's one of England's greatest ever players. We're talking about a skill set that's incredibly high. To take a point from Yaz Rana of the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast, he plays this game where we talk about, you can bat someone at 6 in ODI cricket, and that's it's fine, whatever. And like we've got Sam Curran, like chucking him up, give him a go. If you go through the ODI World Cup winning teams and see who's batting at 6 for them, every time they're a world-class player. It's Joss Butler, it's MS Dhoni, it's Michael Hussey, it's Andrew Simons. Like, it's an incredibly skillful format which displays often the best of a game. And if you go as a fan, you get to see everything. You get to see the best batters in the world bat. You get to see the best bowlers in the world put together a spell. And it's kind of, I can see a world where if it gets a bit more love and care and attention, where that space comes from, I don't know, but I don't think it is the dying format we necessarily thought it could be, or should be, more to the point.
I think everything you've said is true, but ODIs, for that to kind of come across, they need to have a sense of jeopardy, A, and B, this is important, which is why you get that in global tournaments. And I guess that's the challenge for bilateral ODIs. How do you make people invest in it? Because it's a long day, and that's the weirdness as well. Is it's actually a longer day than a day of Test cricket.
It is. It's really strange.
Which is where you get into the argument about should it be 40 overs or whatever, which is something I'm open to, but then that sounds like another way of complicating it.
That'll be a discussion for me and Tim to continue after this show. I remember talking to one player, and he said they killed the wrong one. They killed 40 over cricket, and they should have got rid of 50.
A lot say that.
A lot of people say that. Hey, what a cliffhanger to leave you guys on. Right, this has been the Following On podcast. The final ODI will be with you from Barbados on Wednesday. God, that was tortured. Live on talkSPORT 2. It will also be live streamed on the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. I've been Cameron Ponsonby. I've been joined by Tim Wigmore of The Telegraph. If you're watching us on YouTube, we'll see you again very soon. If you're listening to us through your ears, we'll speak to you very soon as well. Goodbye.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.